We always love starting the top of the show with a brand new YouTube member. Nick Foe, welcome to the family. Thank you for becoming a member. And thank you all for tuning in to the Southside Beat. Friday, March 29th, 2024. Good Friday and a good Easter weekend to you all. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. Today is a day where we want to hand the show off to you all. We're in the holiday spirit. We're in the season of spirited giving here, and we want to give you all the show today. The keys to the car. We want to take your Steelers questions, whether it's about roster construction or the draft or free agency or whatever it might be. It might be about March Madness brackets for all I know, or baseball predictions, whatever it is. It could be about anything, pets, anything. Ask us away. It's that time to do it, Chris.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Football Friday is always a good time to do it. We got still got plenty of stuff to talk about. I know we hit on a good amount of stuff yesterday, but we got a lot of time until the draft. But I mean, it's really not that much time.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. John brought up something here pretty interesting. He says, I wonder if Con is going to add any more free agents before. I would assume that's he's meaning before the draft.
Yes.
Yes. They're not done adding, whether that be via free agency or trade. I think it was. Let's see. It was like the week before. I think it was the week. It was the. Okay, yeah, it was like the week before or something that they acquired Allen Robinson last year, because on the same day you were covering the pre-draft press conference, and then I covered Allen Robinson's press conference because they were both on the same day.
Yep.
So yeah, it was like right before, so they could still acquire people via trade. They signed Chandon Sullivan during the draft.
Correct. That all came out during the draft, right?
Yeah. So no, they're not done adding in free agency. I don't know if they're going to make any more splashes. Like if you're looking for like a Brandon Ayuk trade or something like that, I don't know if I'm going to go that far. But they're not done adding to the roster. Not by any means.
No, and I don't think the splash signing, I think what you might have been looking for there was literally what they did by bringing in Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen set the market. Patrick Queen was the splash signing in that free agency period.
Yeah.
And by now, the markets have kind of tapered off in some way. And there's really no punch right there that can be made. Now, a question here from Trevor. Is bringing in a vet at cornerback like Gilmore or Howard out of the question? I can't say it's out of the question, but also keep in mind, Patrick Peterson's available, and it sounds like they want to work something out with him to bring him back for a little more affordable tag. Now, there are still quite a few veteran cornerback options out there. J.C. Jackson's also available. Adoree Jackson's out there. Gilmore, Xavier Howard's a free agent now. Avonte Maddox, of course, former Pitt guy. Patrick Peterson, as I mentioned. Old friend Steven Nelson is a free agent. I'm just looking at a list right here. K'Wan Williams, who was pretty decent. Like Eli Apple, I don't know about that, but that's a name for depth. Like there's still, point is, several options as far as free agent cornerbacks go. So I can't rule out. You can't rule out. Nobody can rule out anything. Like Chris said, think about last year's draft. Chandon Sullivan was signed on draft day, and the wheels are constantly spinning and constantly turning. And I would think that even after the draft concludes, things could still remain open because they might not fill a hole they want to fill in the draft, or there still might be a couple more free agents that are attractive out there by the time the draft happens. So yeah,
Okay.
you can't rule anything out. Yeah, I know Steven Nelson doesn't want to come back, probably does not want to come back, but
no,
again, you can't rule anything out by this stage, but it's not going to be the splash a la Patrick Queen signing that we saw to kick off free agency.
All right, let's try to get through these questions a little quicker because they're piling up now.
Good.
Which is good. I mean, fire away. There was another one here that kind of went into this, and I was going to try to. Oh man, I thought I started. Okay, here we go. Jerry said, Corey and Chris, thank you. Happy Easter. Do you think they'll add a corner slot? I think that's what, when we're talking about adding a cornerback, I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at more in the slot more than a guy on the outside. Whenever I asked Mike Tomlin about, Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson on the outside, how confident he was in those two on the outside, he just said very confident, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I think slot corner is primarily where they're going to be looking. That's why I think a reunion with Patrick Peterson is not out of the question. I'm not saying it's inevitable or imminent or anything like that. I think it's possible. And then just to reiterate on this, because there might be questions that come up every single day. Squatch Watcher, which by the way, that's a name that you have to really, really don't try not to say that too fast. Might Justin Fields be used in a Taysom Hill type quarterback role, at least at first? The answer is no. Justin Fields is a backup who is going to push Russell Wilson to be the best version of himself that he could possibly be. Because if Russell Wilson does not work out, then the Steelers have themselves a young quarterback with a high ceiling that can essentially, they brought in Justin Fields to do what they wanted to see Kenny Pickett do. They wanted to see Kenny Pickett take that signing and be like, okay, that's fine. Doesn't matter. I'm going to end up winning the job anyway. Now, not saying that Justin Fields is going to win that job out of training camp or anything like that. I think Russell Wilson is deemed the starter. I mean, he definitely is deemed the starter, but I think he will be the starter come week 1. But that doesn't mean that Justin Fields can't go out there in training camp and preseason and everything like that and ball out and be like, okay, we might need to shorten the leash a little bit on Russell Wilson just in case Justin Fields is like about to pop off in this Arthur Smith offense. Yeah. So no, they're not going to use him as some sort of Taysom Hill or Cordell Stewart / 2.0 or anything like that. No, he's the backup to push the crap out of Russell Wilson pretty much.
Yeah. Chris Chin asks, he says, I see Justin Fields is going to wear 5 for the Steelers since they've unofficially retired number 1. How do drafted and traded players go about getting or choosing their jersey numbers here? Now, there's different levels to this from my understanding. Sometimes players can barter, lack of a better phrase, with a current player to get that number. So, for example, or straight up just pay for it. So, for example, if somebody wanted, let's say, the number 24 that comes in, right? Joey Porter Jr. is number 24. Somebody would have to convince Joey Jr. in some way to give up that number. And 99% of the time, it's a price tag. There's a price tag on it. Now, obviously, retired numbers are out. Like, if number 1 is retired, then Fields can't wear number 1. He's worn number 1 through his whole college and pro career so far. So
number 1 is not retired. It's just not been. I mean, Gary Anderson's the last one to wear it in a regular season game.
Right.
And that we're going back to, I think, 1994 for that one.
So it's not retired, but I would say it's honored. I think that's another term to use for it.
But, I mean, Gary Anderson, I mean, he was a kicker. I don't personally, I don't know. And somebody might know a story out there that I don't know, and that's fine. I don't pretend to know everything anyway. But I don't know what the fascination is with not allowing anybody to wear number 1. Because I go back through the Steelers' history and I don't see anybody who's like, okay, there's obvious ones like Terry Bradshaw. Nobody's wearing 12 again. Even though it's not officially retired, nobody's worn 12, and nobody's going to wear 12. 36, nobody's going to wear that. 43, nobody's going to wear that. 7, nobody's going to wear that. And even if those numbers never end up getting retired, there are certain numbers that the Steelers are going to set aside and say, yeah, it's not retired, but it's kind of retired, But okay, and Jay Smith says it right there. Number 1 is for the Chief, and if that's the case, then there you go. Then nobody's going to wear 1 again. So there you go.
Pittsburgh Hornets asks, how would you rank the GMs of the Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins over the last 2 years? In what order would you put them? I would put them in that exact order. Actually, I would go Kahn, Charrington, Dubas, in that order.
Yeah, just the one thing with Dubas is, he's still very, I mean, I don't think he's even a year on the job yet. This is his first year as GM. So, he inherited a lot of mistakes by Ron Hextall. So, you can't fix those things quickly. Those things take time. It's kind of the same thing with Ben Cherington. Whenever he, takes on, Neil Huntington's issues, then there are going to be things to, it's going to take time. It's the same thing whenever Neil Huntington took over for Dave Littlefield back in the 2000s. Like, he had to make some decisions, make some changes that weren't popular at the time. I remember like trading Nate McLouth and like all those guys. That wasn't fun. But you make those decisions because you're trying to kind of reset from some mistakes. And the good thing with football is that Omar Khan didn't inherit like a terrible team, but he inherited a team that, had some issues primarily at quarterback. Now, Kevin Colbert did everything he could to try to, make the quarterback room something, by signing Mitch Trubisky, drafting Kenny Pickett, having those guys in there. But just with Omar Khan's, I don't want to say aggressive, because like if Omar himself doesn't even describe himself as aggressive, I don't want to describe him that way anymore. But the way that he goes about the job, I definitely think that he's done the most to provide a positive impact. However, I will say Ben Cherington has had to do everything that he's had to do with, all the penny pinching that goes on at 115 Federal. So, if he had a little bit more money to play with, I think the Pirates might be in a better situation sooner.
Yeah. Jared asks, why did the Steelers pick up Kyle Allen? The word is depth. That's it. Depth option. Have a third quarterback. He's going to be in the Mason Rudolph / Mitch Trubisky role now. He's going to be the one that is suited up as the emergency quarterback and is inactive on game day and is there for emergency. That's why they signed Kyle Allen. He's a veteran option that could sit behind Fields or Wilson and not be a threat to either of them, quite frankly. And I think I could combo that into what James asked here. What are your thoughts on the Penix visit? Now, reports are out that Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback from Washington, of course, is scheduled to visit the Steelers' top 30 visit throughout this pre-draft process. I think that's interesting to a level. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the pick at 20 or that's the pick at 51 or they're going to move back into the first round to take them, because, again, the plan right now is that Justin Fields is the guy for the future, unless Russell Wilson does something insanely spectacular this year, which you never know. But I think that's more diligence than anything. We talked about this in shows past about establishing relationships with players. And maybe this is a little bit over the top when it comes to being an example of it. But if Mike Tomlin's establishing a relationship with Michael Penix Jr., that might not just be for now. That could be for later, sometime down the line. That could be 5 years from now, 4 years from now. If Michael Penix Jr. is a free agent and the Steelers are in need of a quarterback, there's a relationship there. Mike Tomlin is the best head coach in the NFL when it comes to player relationships. He is a mastermind at player relationships. So that has a little bit to do with it. I think it's not nothing, though, that Michael Penix Jr. is scheduled to come in for a visit, though.
Yeah, they're not going to waste 30 visits on a smoke screen.
Correct.
Again, just it may not be you have to think about not just this upcoming draft when it comes to these visits. They could be thinking about like down the road, possibly if this guy hits free agency, 4 years from now or, whenever, and, the Steelers were really impressed by him and they see enough of, body of work or whatever, over those 4 years or whenever, that there's an opportunity to at least they did their due diligence now and got to know him now. Yeah. But there's not really a 30 visit that really surprises me anymore. Just because, you have to think beyond just this year whenever these guys are going through the pro day and 30 visits and all this kind of stuff. All, they're getting to know as many players as they possibly can. Let's see. It's Hey Butter, I think. Says, hey, fellas, can we say it's a lock for that Amarius Mims will be the 20th pick? No, I will not say that it's a lock, but I will say that tackle is probably the most likely position in the first round. Right. That could be anything. Again, the Steelers, I know, and I can't really say, I've been kind of sworn to secrecy on it a little bit, but there's a couple of players that I know that they like that I don't think would be there at 20. So then my just logic tells me that if there's an opportunity that they can trade up 3 or 4 spots to get one of those guys, they may do that, kind of like we saw with Broderick Jones last year. But if obviously those situations don't play out, then Amarius Mims could be an option at 20. Or Amarius Mims is off the board by then, and they have to, pivot and go center or go with another tackle or whatever whatever the case may be. But no, I at this stage, especially with us still being about a month away from the draft, I have a hard time locking any one particular player at one spot in the draft. But I will say that tackle, according to what I know, is probably the most likely position in the first round.
Yeah. Now, that's not even, this isn't even inside info here. This is more or less just paying attention to what Mike Tomlin and the front office are doing and paying attention to who they're watching. And this dates to the Senior Bowl. They're paying close attention to these linemen, tackle and center, the whole time. The whole process they've been looking at Jackson Powers-Johnson and Zach Frazier and guys like Talise Fuaga, who has a relationship with Isaac Seumalo, and Tyler Guyton. And again, as I mentioned, I think even yesterday, it's not a coincidence that Mike Tomlin sent Isaac Williams to coach the offensive line at the Senior Bowl. It's not a coincidence. The moves they make are calculated. There's no wasted motion with all of this stuff when it comes to the scouting process. They're looking at guys with intent. There's no smoke screens here. Like even the Michael Penix thing is not a smoke screen, as Chris said. So with that said, there's plenty of good tackles in this class. Looking at Alt from Notre Dame, Fashanu from Penn State. Now, I don't think either of those guys are going to be there by the time 20 comes around. But Fuaga, Fountenau, Guyton, Mims, there's 4 names right there that I just mentioned. Realistically, behind the top 2, there's 6 tackles that could realistically go by pick 20. Okay. And I don't think that's crazy to think.
Sebastian says, nah, center is a lock. Barton or JPJ. If Barton is gone by 20, they trade down to get an extra pick. Listen, this is not conjecture. Whenever I say I think tackle is in the first round, this is not what I think based off of a hunch. This is what I think based off of what I've been told what the Steelers are prioritizing on the inside. Yep. This is not me guessing. So again, there are details I cannot share right now. I'm not allowed to share. I would love to, but I cannot share right now.
Right.
Just, you're going to have to trust me on that. And if you don't, then that's fine. I'm just saying you're going to have to trust me that based off of what I know is happening, not what I'm guessing is happening, what I know is happening, tackle is the most likely. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting here saying, oh, on March 29th, they're definitely going to take a tackle. I'm just saying that what I know is going on right now, the most likely position to be taken in the first round is tackle.
And it
is a priority, the priority right now.
And I'm saying as much as I'm saying because of 2 things. Number 1, what they're saying. Number 1, what they're doing. Or number 2, what they're doing. You don't have to look too far. And number 3, if you want to attack this on history dictates that the Steelers telegraph what they do in the draft. History dictates that if they're going to someone's pro day, they're most likely going to draft them first round. Yeah, Stephen A. You can tell us, Chris. We won't tell anybody. Wink, wink.
And really, the details that I know, it's not like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's not like, no. It's just when you know the things that when you're told things off the record, you're told things off the record. And so you can't say certain things, but when you find those things out and you can then put 2 and 2 together and then take some things that you do know that you haven't been told off the record, then you can reveal as much as you can, which is why I'm revealing to this point, based off of what I know, tackle is the most likely position. It just is. Now you had this one up before. Okay. Well, Jerry asks, who will be the starting center? That's a good question, because if tackle is the priority based off of certain things that I know, then okay, well, what do you do? What do you do? Is it Zach Frazier? Because if you don't spend 20 on Jackson Powers-Johnson, then how do you possibly get like Zach Frazier or something like that? Or do you try to wait until the 3rd round for Cedric Van Pran or something? along those lines. I think that's what you have to do. I think ideally this no, and listen, like this is not like calling anybody out to be like, oh, like I'm gonna prove why I'm right. Like, no, it's not that. I'm trying to educate. That is like my sincere thing here is like I'm not trying to sit here and be like, this is what I know.
Yeah.
And because I know this, you're wrong. Like, no, it's not like that. I'm just trying to educate. For real. Like, I'm just trying to let you know, like, this is not based off of some sort of hunch or anything like that. I'm trying to let you guys know this is what's going on because you guys are fans. You want to know what's going on with your team. I'm trying to tell you what's going on with your team. So that's what I'm trying to do more than anything. I'm trying to educate so that if they go, so that when draft night comes around and they take a tackle, you can go back to this video and be like, oh crap, Chris was right.
Or any video that we've
and then if they don't take a tackle, then you can go back and say Chris was wrong. But most likely what happened is either the draft fell a certain way and they're going to reach for a tackle, so they took best player available, or something between now and whenever draft night is. I don't remember the date. Between
25th.
now and April 25th means something changed between now and then.
Yeah,
because there is still some time to go. So I'm basing my information off of what I know now, not what I know come April 25th.
Yeah. All right. Let's skip to a couple more here. Jim asks, does Arthur Smith's offense really require another big receiver acquisition?
Be nice for sure.
Well, if they go into week 1 of 2024 with George Pickens and Calvin Austin as their top 2 receivers, they did something wrong.
No, they need more.
Now, that being said, let me transition into what Big Bad Pitbull asks. What do you all think of trading up in the 3rd round to secure Van Pran if they draft Mims and a wide receiver like Corley, Leggett, or McConkey in the 1st or 2nd? I think right now the most likely avenue in this draft is going to be tackle round 1, receiver round 2 or 3, and then center round 2 or 3. Now, if Van Pran and Mims are drafted first 2 rounds, okay, great. That leaves receiver on the board for the 3rd. I'm going to bring another name up that we've been talking about for, I feel like, months now, as Mark brings up here, Roman Wilson. Like, Mike Tomlin likes Roman Wilson a lot. That's not even inside that's not inside anything. Just watch what's going on and listen to what's going on around us.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin was on top of Roman Wilson at the Senior Bowl. They talked at Michigan Pro Day. Like, he's following up, right? When you're interested in anything, you know, you're a single guy, you're interested in getting to know a girl, you're going to follow up, right? You're not just going to go on the date and then let it marinate and then go on the next date. You're going to follow up, right? Yeah. If you're interested in anything in life, you're going to follow up on it. So the follow-ups that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers front office have made with Roman Wilson since the Senior Bowl are not coincidence. They're not wasted motion. That is a receiver that is firmly on the radar to be drafted 2nd round, 3rd round, whatever it might be. And if that's the pick, pairing him with George Pickens, all right, I can get down with that.
A couple things. There's some talk here, and I mentioned it yesterday. It's Hey Butter says, also I heard that Jackson Powers Johnson failed medical physical exam, source from Mel Kiper Jr. I don't even need a source on that. I can just say water cooler talk at the annual meeting was there are concerns about Jackson Powers Johnson's medicals, specifically with concussions.
Yeah.
So again, water cooler talk, that's not based off of any kind of inside source with the Steelers or anything like that. That is, again, when you're walking around, you're networking, you're hearing different things, you're talking with people who either cover other teams or scouts from other teams or whoever. You know, that's one of the great things about an event like the annual meeting is that there's so many different people there from every single team, or at least every single market. You hear different things. And when you hear, again, it's kind of the same thing with the Justin Fields smoke. It's like there was enough smoke where there was a fire there, right? And if you see enough smoke when it comes to this Jackson Powers Johnson failed medical exams, there might be a fire there. So again, water cooler talk is that there are concerns about that. Yep. So that's why another reason why I don't think that center is likely at 20. Doesn't mean that they can't trade back. Like some of the tackles don't work out in the first round, so that doesn't mean they don't trade back to the near the end of the first round and say this is a position in which we don't mind taking a guy like Zach Frazier. Maybe they trade all the way back down to like 29 or 30, and then they're like, we're comfortable taking Zach Frazier at this point, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying that because of the issues with Jackson Powers Johnson, that also affects like how Zach Frazier that affects his draft stock too,
and it affects how he's perceived also.
Yeah,
and not just like draft, like that will translate into draft stock. That will translate into a team that needs a center, a la the Steelers.
I would love
making a move around them.
That's Biet asks, have you ever gotten a look at a team's actual draft board? I would love to. No. I highly doubt that a team is really going to be willing to share their draft board.
Highly classified. Andy White will probably has the thing
I will say
lockdown.
I will say this though. Whenever I was covering the Rangers, I had somebody not like take a picture of it and send it to me or anything like that, but I had a source essentially list the draft like a portion of their draft board to me, which is really interesting. That's like the closest I've ever come to seeing an actual draft board. But no, I would love to. That'd be amazing. But no.
Did it work out the way it was listed?
Yes.
Nice. There you go.
Of course, I think that was the year the Rangers had like the second overall pick. Something like that.
Not lighter.
I think that was a lighter year. Yeah. I think so.
Okay.
I think that was
so
the later year.
Torkelson was number one?
Well, for them, it's like it's their board.
No, I mean, who got taken number one that year? Was it Torkelson?
I think who was the first overall pick in that draft?
I'll tell you in a second. But anyway.
But yeah. So whenever Jack Leiter was taken and covering that draft, it did not shock me one bit. As a matter of fact, as soon as I had somebody tell me that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and pre-write Jack Leiter now. And lo and behold.
It was Henry Davis, actually. I got the year wrong.
That's right. Okay, yeah. So
that was Henry Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Davis, Leiter, Tigers had the third pick that year. I thought they had one that year. Jackson Jobe. Who else was taken in that draft? Anybody notable? Kumar Rocker. Oh, God. What a saga that was. Kumar Rocker. Goodness. Who did? I mean, the Pirates obviously took Henry Davis, but who else was taken? Anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole. Oh, yeah. Solometo was the second round.
Let's go through some more questions here. Let's see. Okay, we already hit that one. Sticky B. When is the Southside be getting some show swag? We have not had that conversation yet, but I think the best way to get some swag for the show is to keep liking, keep subscribing, keep watching, like get other people to watch, get the numbers up. That's the
sharing.
That's the best way to because if the numbers get to the point where we start to rival the Ramon show, I don't think DK and Dolly are going to have really a choice, right? So let's keep at it. This is not just like we're doing everything that we can on our end. Yeah. So you guys help us out, man. You want some show swag, you gotta help us out, but we're gonna keep doing everything we can do on our end. Let's see. I got some more questions, I think.
Yeah, I got
I know we missed a couple.
Well, Steeler Lee asked, anyone watching the UFL this weekend? No, I am not. I have other things to take care of this weekend to watch the UFL. It's a holiday weekend.
Actually, the main reason why we were late for the show today was because I have been trying like heck to work on this one ceiling fan in my house for like 5 hours trying to fix it. So just because I'd rather do that than spend $200 to get a new one. And you know, I'm not the most handiest of men, so I would also have to pay for installation, which would cost $200. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's what happens when you're trying to list a house. You have to get everything looking good.
I went and got a haircut and got lunch today. That was my somewhat of my morning. All right, let's go to Donnie, who asks, what do you think to maybe drafted Florida State wide receiver Johnny Wilson as a big guy in the third? Seems like Arthur Smith's type of guy. I think the plan at wide receiver would be to get someone that can complement George Pickens well. Now, right now, George Pickens is kind of in this tweener phase where he's developing as a all-around wide receiver, and yet he still has that really favorable trait of being a go ball kind of guy. Go get down the field, get separation, get space, outrun defenders, and catch the ball downfield. Like, I feel like the strength at wide receiver in the draft pool are possession guys. And I think that there's a lot of possession guys that are attractive to the Steelers, and that really, in my opinion, would be better options than a guy like Johnny Wilson. But that's just me.
Yeah. Let's see. Mark asks, any insight on how Coach Tomlin feels about Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think Coach Tomlin would salivate at the idea of having Marvin Harrison Jr. next to George Pickens. But no, that's not happening. They're not going to trade up into the top 3 to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Or top 5 at the absolute minimum. He might be the best player in the draft. Let's be real. Teresa asks, I heard an analyst say that Van Pran isn't a schematic fit. Thoughts? I think the biggest issue that I see with Van Pran isn't necessarily about schematic fit. It's about his footwork. Mm-hmm. He takes a step back way too often, and that's giving away leverage. Obviously, like when you're, in pass protection, you set up a different way than obviously when but I'm talking about like he takes an initial step back on run blocking sometimes. The footwork's inconsistent. And when you're talking about, blocking, when you're blocking downhill, like if you're, blocking in a man or a gap scheme, you can't do that. You've got to instantly gain leverage on who's on the guy in front of you. And then if you're, if you're blocking the like wide zone or outside zone or something like that, like your first step can't be backward. It's got to be to the side of what you're, running the football. So I think it's more of a footwork issue. I think that it's more that than it is anything else, not necessarily in terms of a schematic fit. And that's just based off of what I saw on film. That's all.
Yeah. Let's keep going here. A couple more here. Mr. Nick at Time asks, is Mike Sainrisville, cornerback out of Michigan, a good scheme fit? I think he's the perfect nickel guy. I think he's the perfect guy to put inside that slot and to bump receivers and run with them. I think that is, if Mike Sainrisville was a pick in the 3rd round or somewhere in that range, that late day 2 range, I'm all for it. I think that's a good fit for the Steelers.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Jason says or asks, can any of the top center prospects realistically start week 1? I think if there is no medical issues with Jackson Powers Johnson, yes. And then Zach Frazier, I'd say yes. I don't know about Van Pran. That's where I really think like the top 2 are week 1 starters. Van Pran is kind of that. I'd rather see how things go first before you'd go ahead and say, okay, yeah, he could be a week 1 starter. I think that's where it becomes, not saying it can't. I'm just saying it starts to get a little muddy at that point where I'd want to see, okay, what is he doing, in training camp? What's he doing in preseason? How is he looking when he's actually lining up against these guys in preseason stadium, stuff like that. How is he holding his ground whenever, there are, pad on pad stuff going on in Latrobe? That's whenever I'd want to see, okay, what's Van Pran doing before we could just go ahead and say, oh yeah, he's the guy. He could be your starter right away. So I'd say if they get Frazier somehow in this draft, then yes, I think that's your starting center week 1.
If they spend a pick that high on either of Frazier or Powers Johnson, they are going to start. Like, this isn't a case where you spend a 1st round pick or a 2nd round pick on an offensive lineman and you sit him. That doesn't seem logically sound to me. And quite frankly, if they did that, I think that would be a step backward from some philosophy. Like, I get it with Porter and Broderick, they didn't start him right away. And in hindsight, they should have started both right away. But you can't do that again. If they take a tackle 1st round or one of the 2 centers early 1st round, they're going to have to play them. And that's almost out of necessity too, in a way. So I see either of Powers Johnson or Frazier being starting caliber players. Donnie asks, do you guys see us bringing back Eric Rowe? I hope so. I think Eric Rowe, if he were to come back, would be more of one of those like late in the process ads before minicamp. I think Eric Rowe is not really high up on the market right now anyway. So
they got 3 safeties right now anyway.
And they do with Elliott, signing Elliott.
And
So,
Deshaun Elliott is an upgrade over Eric Rowe. I mean, Eric Rowe, like, don't get me wrong, he played really well. And plus I think they still have Trenton Thompson too.
They do.
So so they actually have 4 safeties right now. And so I think, when you look at it, especially like Deshaun Elliott, what was it, like 2 years for $6 million, something like that? It was a very affordable contract. So no, I think they're set at safety. I don't think they need, if they bring him back, then it's just like ultra depth. But I think when Eric Rowe sees everything that's going to be ahead of him, I think he's going to try to take opportunities elsewhere.
Right. A couple more here, then we will get out of here on a Friday.
Sorry, I had to let my dog outside. He was about to have an accident on the floor. He was like running. He was like running back and forth between the back door and me. I'm like, all right, I think you have to go outside.
Gotta go. Butter asked, "Do you fellas see the Steelers drafting another blue blood or legacy player like Luke McCaffrey, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Brandon Rice, that'll be Brendan Rice, or Frank Gore Jr.? Of those 4, why not Frank Gore Jr., like on late day 3, to fill out that running back depth? Why not?
Well, they have a third running back now with Cordell Patterson.
Now they do. That is correct. Of those four, I would think McCaffrey would be more likely, just because like he wouldn't cost much in terms of a draft pick. But I don't see any of these 4 being on the radar right now.
Trotter, ultra brain fart. That's the inside linebacker from Clemson, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay.
You're good.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like, okay, holy crap. Like, I think that would be a guy that if it were in the right round and just the way the draft board falls, or just the way the draft falls, then that'd be a guy you'd get.
Right.
Because like, yes, like right now you look at it, you have Patrick Queen, you have Landon Roberts, you have Cole Holcomb, you got Mark Robinson. Okay. You got a pretty solid inside linebacker room. And obviously Patrick Queen is the top dog, but what if things aren't exactly right with Cole Holcomb? Right. Like what if like, even if he ends up making a comeback, he's not the same player. This is a major leg injury that he suffered. So if they have an opportunity to add a talented guy to that room, that could be like a third guy, because I think Landon Roberts is absolutely capable, and not only capable, but is actually a really good partner. His game meshes really well with Patrick Queen. Yeah. If those 2 are your 2 primary inside linebackers, I think that's a really solid duo, because Patrick Queen is a very, very good one, borderline elite one. And then you have a Landon Roberts whose game really meshes well with Queen. You can bring in a guy like Trotter to play, like be the third guy behind him in the right round. Absolutely. I'd take that. That one interests me the most, for sure.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to end today in terms of questions. And I appreciate everyone for jumping in, everyone who asked the question.
Mr. Nick of Time is right too. We also have Moon.
That's right. I forgot about Jeremiah Moon.
Yeah. Sorry, I say we. That's because I'm reading. Didn't we sign Moon? Like, yes, the Steelers also signed Moon.
There you go. Good call. Yeah. Appreciate you all for chiming in today. It's a good time to back out of here today. Obviously, a holiday weekend. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy your Easter weekend. And we will be back on Monday. So will DK and Ramon. No Ramon Foster show today. DK and Ramon, obviously DK's in Miami covering the Pirates opening series. So, no Ramon Foster show today. We appreciate you all for jumping in today to join us on the Southside Beat for a little Q&A. We'll be back on Monday. Have a great Easter weekend. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan, and this has been the Southside Beat. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.